Hi, and welcome everyone. This is Varleigh at Lavender Sky Panther with you on Saturday, June 27th, 2026, for another live this week. And I say it sometimes sporadically, but how the heck is it Saturday already? What I'm finding is there's like nearly enough time. It's like a narrow escape to even prepare for the shows anymore. Because if you know what I do here, I just intuitively kind of soak in what's the next theme going to be. And then sometimes I get it right away after doing a show, like, okay, next week we're doing this. And then sometimes there's a pause or it lingers on till Wednesday, Thursday, and things start to shape up. And you can tell by what I do in the post section. I'll start dropping little things I'm looking at. And to give a little hint of where things might be going. And then when we get to a situation like today, I woke up because always on my mind is, hey, God, what do you want me to bring through for all of us, to talk and share tonight? And stuff just started pouring in even this morning. So it kind of makes it hard to pull everything together. So if I stumble here and there or trying to catch thoughts, it's just because I was just given a whole bunch of stuff like right before coming on. So as usual, I take a little bit of the notes. I have a little slide format. I just have a few slides today. And, I try to remember and catch everything. And then what I often do is if I miss something I really wanted to touch on, or any of you good people bring up something in the chat that we, might want to look at further, what I do is over the course of the next few days after the show airs, I go ahead and drop some links and, to maybe things that are interesting to anybody in there after the fact. Now, as per usual, feel free to jump into the live chat or not, doesn't matter. I have a little kind of quote unquote set piece to just run through of a topic for the day, but feel free to drop anything in there in the chat that's related or not to the topic. Okay, that's how it goes. And that's just for anybody who's new here. Welcome, regardless, whether you've been here a long time or if you're new to the channel. Oh, and quick shout out while I'm thinking about it to Lake Superior Skywatcher Nature Lover and her channel. She just posted shorts, and it's got two towers, profile of two towers with scaffolding on them, really old looking towers, and there's a really funky looks like a cloak and craft happening above them. There's also a light reflection happening above that. This is for anyone who knows I do the sky watching. She's filming through a window, and there's a little bit of a reflection of the light fixture from behind her, but other than that, when you see through that to the actual cloud, doing something interesting. So who knows, I may do a screenshot off of her thing and highlight it later. All right. So anyway, let me get into this right away. A lot of different topics will kind of come through. Let's see what happens. For you and me both, it's always kind of a surprise each week, which is a good thing. All right. So here's the just to mark and denote the show with the little cover. It's called It's a Wrap. And if you know by now, I try to drop in little clues here and there of where we might be going with all of this. So it's a wrap, and as you can see, it's very intensive for something that happened in 1983. I'm not sure if any of you were, remembering this, but I grew up in Miami, and this is a whole thing. It's funny that we're leading back into Miami a little bit. It's not going to be a Miami intensive show like last week, but last week we were talking a lot about Miami, and now we're just kind of pulling that thread and continuing a little bit further on a totally different aspect of it, and then we'll drop it in and move on. But the front part of the show is going to be a bit about Miami in interesting ways. So anyway, the cover is showing these islands. And if you're around then in the 80s or remember it remotely, this is all pink, we'll get into the details, but just to dumb it down for myself more than anybody else, this is just like a pink plastic wrap, vinyl plastic wrap going around these islands. And I think there were about 11 of them moving along. If you know Miami, it was from, and I'll show a map later, around the Venetian Causeway, Venetian Bridge area on up, moving up toward direction of Hollover. So boom, 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 they wrapped all of these islands. We'll get into the details soon. But this happened at 1983. It's the time of all of these hit TV shows and movies surrounding the glamour, and the cool, hot and coolness of Miami at the time. So, of course, I have my little hint here. We've got Crockett and Tubbs, Sonny Crockett and Rico Tubbs sitting there from Miami Vice. And then we have, this is a scene of them rolling out this stuff around the islands. We have the Art Deco district of Miami, a big part of the backdrop of making Miami Vice look, sexy and cool. And then we're going to cross over a little bit from the 80s to the 90s we have Vanilla Ice, his contribution to putting like Miami scene on the map with Ice Ice Baby. So whether I was in Miami or I found myself in the early 90s over in Europe, I lived there for a time. And boy, did it take me back to be in a cafe and hear either the Miami Vice theme song come on, or, Ice Ice Baby was big at that time. And I just smiled because no matter if I was in Miami or across the world, that connected. Like, music takes you instantly back to the whole scene. Now, I will say that just to give my own personal, story to this, and there'll be more sprinkled through, and then I'll get into why the title and where we're going with all of this. But, I grew up in Miami, and as a teenager, we did a lot of club hopping. And actually at that time, we would do it over in Miami Beach and downtown Miami. And it was really rough. So we're just coming off the heels of the Mariel boat lift, if you know what that's about, the releasings, of the prisoners and others from the prisons in Cuba and Mariel, and different types of prisoners. So not to be confused with political prisoners that came in waves before that. This is a very different type of situation where it notably affected the crime, in the community. So I have very personal stories of people who were hurt or held up or home invaded. And that was language we didn't have before all of this was going on. Miami was known as like the drug capital of the world at the time. Brickell Avenue, if you know that from my previous show, all of these big buildings started to come up because there's a lot of drug money in those banks at the time. So economy boosted on like every street you saw. It wasn't so much about Lamborghinis as it was the Ferrari and all the fast, expensive cars, which still kind of goes on today. But man, it was like every other car. If you were just in a normal, even suburban neighborhood, you saw all of that effects of all of this going on. Now it could be downright very dangerous. And I can't even believe I was allowed as a teenager to go into some of these areas, or if my parents knew, they probably would have been like horrified. But we went into some pretty sketchy areas, and the crew that I ran around with, we did no drugs, no alcohol. We were just interested, and this ties into the show. We were interested in the good music and dancing to it. So to the effect that I've been in some clubs, and I was like so pissed off, to say it not nicely, but really irritated, let's just say the family-friendly version, that I had to pay money just for a glass of water because I didn't want alcohol. I didn't want any of their stuff. So, or I just sit there and, stand there and drink soda, but was not at all into the other stuff. And in fact, to the extreme, it's funny when I say that phrase, I'm thinking of Vanilla Ice, because that's a lyric in his Ice Ice Baby. To the extreme, da da da. But anyway, to the extreme that I was a designated driver. So any of you out there, you feel my pain. You were the one carrying the lipstick for your friends. You were the one making sure everyone was okay and didn't get into big trouble. So that was me. Anyway, little personal anecdote there. But my point is that I knew Miami well. I was inside and out on the scene where, this Miami Vice stuff, a lot of it was no joke. But there's so many, beautiful things about it. So when this, I'll get into this in more detail, but when Christo, the artist who did this, was Bulgarian-born Christo, and his partner, Jeanne Claude, she and he developed, the wrapping of these islands. And it just became a part of this whole era, which was about danger, yes, but at the same time, a lot of fun and great music. So anyway, let's see where this takes us. Before we jump into the fun and the pinks of this, although I should say something about the color pink before I lose sight of that. Pink, we know, is kind of a feel-good, happy color. It can be. Even in this era of the 80s, I don't know if you remember, I do in my culture. And again, it depends on what city you were in. Maybe some of this applies to you, maybe it doesn't. So I'll just relate my experience. But going through school, it was a thing that people would get made fun of, or not in a serious way, but if you wore pink and green, like a pink and green stripes was big, or purple and green, you were called preppy, right? And you had the collar up, you put the collar up, you're a total prepper in a different way, not prepping for disaster, but you were preppy. And so you were called preppy and all of that. But the funny thing now, looking at through, the glasses now, and where we're at with the kind of spiritual ascension going on the planet, pink and green are the heart space. That's the heart chakra. So there's different levels of it. And then if we get into purple and green, we still have green as the heart center, and then we got purple as the crown chakra. So actually all the people running around wearing pink and green, purple and green, that was all a good vibe time. And that, kind of sums up like the 80s. Even the music, if you look at the chord progressions and everything about the music, we'll put the tabling the lyrics off to the side, but if you just really listen to it, it's all about feeling good. And then the 90s, it branched into there a little bit too. The lyrics for the rap started off pretty innocent enough, and then we saw the progression moving on into the 90s, how they got really kind of trashy. But anyway, that's not what I'm talking about on this show. Maybe that'll pop up on another show. It'll be fun just to do one taking a real good look at music and its progression along time. But now we're going to focus like on the art and the culture of really larger than life art installations. But before I get to that, and I will in my slides, that's coming up next, I have to touch on, well, you know what I'll do? I'll let you know why it's the title, and then I'm going to move into the topic that came up this morning that I need to talk about that's loosely related, but I want to cover that, and then we'll get into the crux of the show. But anyway, it's a wrap. Have you guys heard of that phrase before? It's closely associated with Hollywood and film, when it was the reel-to-reel film I'm talking, where it had celluloid actual film running through the machine. Okay, there's a great video that will show you that for anyone who might not have been exposed to that system is Sade's Smooth Operator, the music video. There's a scene where she's watching film with a detective, and it's one of those, reel-to-reels. And in fact, it runs through and the reel runs through and it goes, makes a sound. So that's all there. Anyway, at a time when there was reel-to-reel, it's a wrap supposedly meant this. Now, maybe others of you know, there's another meaning. I only found the one, but supposedly it's an acronym. And so in Hollywood, they say, it's a wrap, everybody. Okay, we're done with the scene. They got the little board and they go clip, they roll it, they have the scene, and then they're like, all right, that's a wrap. So it's a wrap supposedly, and I didn't know this until yesterday, comes from wind, roll, and print. So there you have your acronym, WRAP. So that's when you've got, working with a reel-to-reel film. So wind, roll, and print it. It's a wrap. We're all done. So, of course, this is a little, double word play. It's a wrap on closing something up, the eras of the 80s and the 90s, and also actually wrapping things. So I do give you guys a little preview before I head there in the show. But anyway, we're talking about wrapping islands and all the controversy. Sure, it's kind of beautiful. It's cool. But there's a lot of controversy at the time to let these artists do this because why? Environmental reasons. Are you killing plant life or algae or sharks or, whatever's swimming around here, fish, and also the ecosystem on these little islands. Now, these islands are man-made. So they say they were just kind of the extra spoils of when they were dredging and making some of these channels deeper, and they would form these little islands. But, artificially created or not, a whole ecosystem starts developing. So there's huge controversy. These stayed up for 2 weeks. That was an installation that stayed up for 2 weeks, and we'll get into it further. And as always, I like to just drop these topics, and then after I'm done talking about them, or I don't know if you chime in on them in the live chat, then, we maybe get to some other, interesting angles on this. And then if not, I'm dropping it out there for all of you to look further into, use it as a springboard to do your own research. If it's a title that inspires you, and if not, no big deal. Maybe you've come away with learning something new today, like I did, even creating this every single time. This is a whole exercise, and okay, I'm learning a lot on this too. So anyway, let's continue. So the slightly off to the side topic, but also very front and center. I don't want to say that it's nothing important. It's very important. That's why it was on my mind this morning. So as I woke up, I always put it out there. What's the highest and best good? What do we want to hear on the show today? And Venezuela came up. So if any of you are slightly in the know, I know a lot of us don't tune into mainstream news much anymore, I'm guessing, but you might have otherwise seen it. And there've been a couple of catastrophic earthquakes happening there. Now, just from what I gather, there were 2 back-to-back. They were very shallow, so that's atypical for the type of thing that happens there and the level of destruction. And they happened within 2 minutes of each other. And that's also very atypical. And what I want to say is, if you watch some of my other live shows, you see I've gone in and mentioned things that are out there artificially to create these things. On one of the previous shows, I talked about, again, I like to capture the hint drops that we find in TV and movies, and because they're always there. And a big hint drop on artificially created earthquakes was in The $6 Million Man from the early 70s or mid 70s, or maybe just after that, where they were in the Bigfoot episodes talking about scientists that they were trying to stop something from happening. And what do they always do? They roll out in the theme of the rap with the roll part. the show's title, they roll out this, big plan. Oh, we'll just nuke it. We'll put a nuclear device in there and blow it up in the San Andreas Fault in California. That'll take care of everything, because that's where the situation was set for that particular episode. So they're giving you hints that it's not, anything outlandish to say this, and everybody I think would hopefully know this by now, that there are, let's just say, entities, groups that can cause artificial earthquakes. Now, whether it's military on the surface or it's something else happening below the earth, that happens. Yes, there's also Mother Nature doing her thing, expanding, contracting, doing whatever. But I'm talking about when you look at things strategically, other things are done, with purpose. And my example to that, I'm not going to go too deep into this, is, and I mentioned on another show, and literally deep on this, is the quote unquote secret, not so secret base anymore, underwater base called AUTEC is the acronym. Since we're talking acronyms with It's a Wrap, it's AUTEC. And it's a quote unquote secret base, although with Google Earth and everything, digital, there's not much a secret anymore. But let me just read the acronym. I always forget about it. It's the Atlantic, here, it's moving so I can't see. The Atlantic Undersea Testing and Evaluation Center. I think that's what it stands for. I'm trying to read, but it's kind of cutting it off on my thing. So anyway, just to show you, I'll show you on my phone. That secret base, the reason why I'm bringing it up is just look that up on Wiki. Just put AUTEC and in the internet and look at a Wiki page, and it tells you exactly what they do. And actually, I think I'll read it. I'm feeling sassy today. I'll go ahead and read it. So just to show you, Andros Island is an island on the Bahamas. And I think this will settle down in a minute. Give it a minute. Okay. So it's hard for me to point and hold this up, and I know there's glare. But here, if you look see that it says Andros Island, and it's off to the right of that island, you see a rectangle. Okay, so that's just kind of dummy down, denoting the base. And there's an arrow pointing to West Palm Beach, and you see Miami there. So it's all very close. All right. Now, off to the right of that chunky block, it says there's an area called the Tongue of the Ocean. Interesting acronym there. That's TOTO. And what do we know about Toto, Wizard of Oz? There's a lot of code in there, but I'm not going to go there. Let's see. So let me just read from the Wikipedia what they do. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but my point is, with every news story, with everything, sure, once again, use your inner truth detector. The news will report one thing. You can be in accordance with it. That's fine. Maybe that is the truth, but also maybe question some things. Maybe the questioning takes you in a loop that takes you right back to what the quote unquote mainstream news story is saying, but also it might not. So if you get a funny feeling like I did, I'm like, I woke up, I'm aware of the earthquake and the earthquakes in Venezuela happening with a lot of reported deaths and injuries. And I'd like to just take a stop and say, I should have said this at the very beginning, for anybody from Venezuela, if you have family and friends, even if you don't, really best wishes and prayers to everybody in Venezuela. And I pray everyone is okay, and just send a lot of love and upliftment to that area in general on the planet. So anyway, I just want to say, yes, we got to kind of suss things out. Does something not sit right with you, either gut level, the gut check level is our intuition, and in our heart space. Something didn't sit right with me, and the fact that the word Venezuela even popped up on my radar this morning before this show told me a lot. So I'm just going to mention this, and this is one of those things I'm going to drop and go. Make your own conclusions. I'm just letting you know what I see. And as I say on this channel, literally in the skies and elsewhere, what do you see? What do you see with your third eye, with your inner eye, not just your physical eyes, watching the news and absorbing and just believing that? I think a lot of us know better than that by now, to just take it at face value. But anyway, I'm reading straight off of like the summary. If you just type in AUTEC, you can do it on your own too. And here I just lost it. Give me a second. Yeah, and bear with me on this show, since I didn't have much time to get all the new concepts together. I'm going to read a lot of just screenshots. Okay, so, and this is nothing, nothing censorship worthy. This is just looking it up. It's on the internet for all to see in public. AUTEC stands for the Atlantic Undersea Test and Evaluation Center. It is a highly specialized instrumented deep water laboratory and naval base operated by the U.S. Navy in the Bahamas. What is its purpose? AUTEC is the Navy's premier location for researching, testing, and evaluating anti-submarine warfare weapons, sonar systems, and tracking devices. It allows military personnel and NATO allies to conduct highly accurate simulations of undersea and in-air warfare without operational risks. Why the location? The primary test range is situated in a natural oceanic trench known as the Tongue of the Ocean, Toto, on Andros Island. Deep water access. The water plunges from roughly 30 feet near the coast to depths of to 13,000 feet, a very short distance offshore, providing the perfect deep water environment. Acoustic isolation. The surrounding geography blocks out a lot of the ocean ambient noise, making it ideal for acoustic and sonar testing. Capabilities. Key capabilities. Weapons range. Used to test torpedoes and other ordnance, track their trajectory, and recover them after the exercise. Acoustic range, an array of underwater hydrophones or microphones and sensors on the seafloor measure the sonar and detection accuracy of passing submarines and ships. And it goes on to talk about fleet operational readiness and stuff with environmental monitoring of sea life, etc. So my point of mentioning that is just maybe keep that in mind, just a little nugget to go look into further on your own. But keep in mind that, anything saying simulated underwater warfare, you can bet your bottom dollar they're also doing real stuff too. Okay. So back to Venezuela, I was looking at some footage, and that's another thing. Immediately after any disasters or any collapsing of the Champlain Towers over in North Miami Beach, I can't remember the year, but when those fell, I'm also saying that was artificially caused, but that was a whole nother story. But anytime, we see some of these things, just keep in mind, I don't want Mother Nature, but Mother Nature gets blamed for a lot, or we might say, oh, don't look too much at artificial because it's just Mother Nature and we're ascending, yada, yada. It's a little bit of everything, okay? There are cases of Mother Nature, there are cases of not so much. There are cases of things happening below us to cause some of these things. There's cases of things happening above us causing these things. But at the end of the day, we can just put all of that aside. I know I spent a lot of time on it. I felt it was important. But now we can just cast that aside. We just know these things exist. And now we can just focus on the people and the love of all of us. Again, getting back to that pink theme that's important on my cover, that really jumps out at you, the pink. That's why I put the pink pillow here too, to reference that. Now is the time for the pink energies, the heart space energies, and the love energies to ramp up, way up. I was laughing that, we'll get back now into the happier vibe stuff, but I just do want to give special honoring of the people of Venezuela. I also wanted to look at the root of Venezuela because that became important to me too. As you know, I really love to look at etymology, the origins of words and places and people and things, because that's where I feel we get more to the truth, especially if you're going to look at etymology. I usually start off with putting an ancient Greek and then put ancient Greek meaning for this, and this. In this case, I just put in Venezuela to see what would come up. Now, there's a little bit of a pattern here with history. So just the immediate thing coming off of the overview AI type thing, summary on the internet. And then I looked at all the other channels. They all parroted, as in a parrot, just copying and repeating the same exact thing. And it's a red flag for me. So that marching story, going along that I don't support after looking at this, the origin of Venezuela, they say, oh, Amerigo Vespucci. Where have we heard about him before? Okay, cartographer, explorer. He's the one they attribute the name America to. And I think America comes from a different source, etymology, that's something else. But anyway, let's just say in the Venezuela story and the naming of it, supposedly Amerigo, and I'm paraphrasing, Vespucci comes along and says, oh, what are we going to call this place? And they say, oh, I see this island. And I forget the name of it. It's just slipping my mind right now. And that's reminding me of Venice. So let's call it Venezuela. Well, I don't believe that story. I really don't. Maybe that was a little part of why it got that name. But if you pull that thread or follow that, I call them badger holes, not rabbit holes. If you jump in a little further, we see a different story unfolding altogether. And I have the facts, and I think because there's so much swimming around here, pun intended, information-wise that I want to bring forth, I'm going to leave the facts aside, but I will put the links in the description area below after the show airs. Okay, so you can get the detail, and of course look for it on your own as well. So there was another recording by a Spanish. I don't know if he himself was a navigator or just mapped things or worked in archives back in Spain. But anyway, I think it was in the 1500s. He wrote like a document. Oh, welcome, Illuminated Perfume. And she says, hello, Varleigh. Hey there, Roxana over at Illuminated Perfume. And actually, as I get into this, you came in at a perfect time. And bene, ven acá. Bene is the word for come. So thanks for coming in the right time, as this relates to the etymology of the word Venezuela, or the name. I do want to put a little shine of light over to Roxana over there. Check out her YouTube channel, Illuminated Perfume, on YouTube. More specifically, she has a beautiful video, and I'll link it later, of a time lapse of an artist with chalk doing an amazing job of drawing the Venus as she comes out of the ocean. And also check out illuminatedperfume.com. Roxana over there has further links, and you can just sign up. And for beautiful, beautiful journal entries, she writes so exquisitely, and the images she selects to pair with her writings are just exquisite. So I highly recommend that, and also the artwork that she does as well. So she works with aromatics, and I just like her words to do the speaking. So go check all of that out. This relates because Venus came up prominently when the whole idea of Venezuela came up in my mind. And as I take you through the etymology, we'll see there is a connection with the word Venus. So anyway, back to Venezuela. Just the limited, or not limit. I used to know a lot more Spanish. I was pretty fluent, but it's been a while. But, you know, the first thing I thought of when I thought of Venezuela is ven, like come. So the book, textbook version, mainstream version, is going to tell you that Amerigo Vespucci story. Okay. For me, I'm like, that doesn't add up. Okay, there's an island, reminds them of Venice. Well, then we can pull that thread further and say, well, then let's look at the origin of the word Venice, or Venetia, or Venezia, or whatever you want to say. And when you look at the Venice origin, that city, okay, their origin story takes it back to a coming together of like different peoples is one of the interpretations. So I'm like, okay, I'm on board with that. So then we come back to Venezuela, and back to this guy. I'm sorry, I just dropped that story midair, but I'm coming back to it. So that guy that was documenting things from Spain, and they're noted for back in that day, being immaculate with their record keeping out of Spain and the navigation, all of that. This gentleman, who I'll put the details in the description area below because I can't remember the name and I don't have time to look it all up again. He described that the name Venezuela came from an original indigenous group of peoples, and they had a similar name, and I was going to write it down and I didn't. It was something like Venezuela or something. It's spelled a little bit differently. And guess what they said that name came from? He cites that meaning, oh shoot, I wrote it down. Hang on. He wrote it down also as like that it meant a coming together. But more specifically, he said that the indigenous name for it was a loving, peaceful people. And then that further takes us to the word love. And what is Venus known for? Being a planet of the feminine, or love, right? And so to me, the coming together of love is what that means for Venezuela's origins. It was a peaceful, loving people there. But what do we know what happened? These conquerors come through. They have to justify that they were hostile and whatever. And so they're not going to mention in the same breath that this was a loving, coming together of people. They're going to paint a very different story, aren't they? And they're going to say that they're hostile, or they were killing this and this, or whatever, or they just died out, right? So many stories we are told. No, a loving people isn't even going to get sick, because that pink green heart space vibration would even cast out any sickness in the area. So they were a conquered people. So they, what I'm just saying, and again, this is through my eyes, this is my interpretation that I want to share. But anyway, so the point is that this loving coming together of people, to me, is the basis of the name Venezuela. It's not what they say, oh, it reminded me of this island. Okay, fine and good. Maybe that's a piece of it. But it also, another variation of the etymology they put out there too, is like it had some tie to the name beach. But of course, they're going to say it was Amerigo Vespucci and emphasize him. Anything to distract and take you away from the core, and I do mean core like heart, meaning of the word for Venezuela. Okay, so I know that was a roundabout way probably to explain that, but then that takes me back to Illuminated Perfume's video, which is really cool because it's the embodiment, literally. She is a body embodying love. And what do we have in that scene of the famous Venus coming out of the ocean? She's tied with the ocean and the water, which where these earthquakes happen, where Venezuela, if you look on the map, is located, is right on the coast with the water. So it just shares a beautiful relationship. And I'm sure any of you, this inspires you to look further. There's probably an amazing, deeper connection there. But this is part of my show. It's like drop and go. So now I think that's all I wanted to say. And again, if I leave something out, I will put it in the description area below later. Okay, so now we're going to flip it a bit, flip the energies, and come back to it's a wrap. Okay, now start off. I gave you a little bit of the backstory of my experiences running around in Miami, and I also want to talk about a couple things. So let's get into the Miami Vice. I hint dropped at that. We've got Miami Vice. We've got of this era, the 80s moving into the 90s, and the color of pink and the flamingos were in the intro of Miami Vice, if you recall. I put it in the post section if anybody isn't familiar or grew up with that theme song going. I actually played it in the background just as I was about to step onto this show to get in the mood of this whole thing. But anyway, we had the pink flamingos and we had the pink on the Art Deco buildings and pink cars. This is the Vanilla Ice video for Ice Ice Baby. He's wearing bright pink. Everything was about pink, even Pretty in Pink, if you remember that movie. Actually, this is the, what is it? Like, I don't want to say it, like 40th year anniversary. I think if they didn't already, they're releasing that in the big screen in the movie theaters again. I saw a preview for that happening. Then we had iconic music videos. We're even going to take it out of Miami. I said on the show, we're going to cover from Miami to Berlin and on the map and off the map. So we've talked about Venezuela. We talk about London, England. One of my favorite videos back in the day, iconic, was Pet Shop Boys with West End Girls. And this stood out to me, this peach salmon, roll up, shutter or whatever behind them in one scene. He's got like neon lights going behind him that are like pink purple. So, if like that time was very much about pink and neon colors and all that kind of like happy vibe, right? So anyway, not only did we have Miami Vice going on, there were all other, kinds of movies and music videos, and I can't get into all of them now. But one thing I do want to bring up, though, is kind of a rehashed, slight take on it. I guess, there's like little nods to Miami Vice. I don't know if you know it. In early 2000, there's another series called Burn Notice. And that was a fun little show. Actually, I liked it in some ways a little bit better than Miami Vice because it was a little more family friendly than Miami Vice, could get a little gritty. Also, a fun little tidbit, and I'm sorry, you're going to hear me jump all over and throw things from all over the place because it's just streaming through. I just found out, too, doing a little research for this show, I knew there were cameos by quote unquote celebrities back in the day on Miami Vice, but I had no idea how many. So I didn't post it yet, but there's a video clip. Somebody took the time to take little clips from all of the TV series and put all of the, a lot of them were like now, big ticket, quote unquote celebrities back in the day that were just kind of getting their start. So there are people like Julia Roberts, Vito Mortensen. I mean, a lot of people you wouldn't expect to, that kind of, I think that was their trial run in a bigger TV pilot to see how they would do going mainstream in the future. So a lot of them I had no idea were in there. So that was like before they quote unquote blew up, right, in their fame. Interesting. Anyway, and that was coming from me, and I remember the show. I just don't remember seeing those people. Not all of them anyway. Sorry, I'm just trying to look something up if I can find it quick enough. If not, I'll leave it alone. But I was talking about Burn Notice, and so yeah, that came out. What are they saying? In 2007 to 2013. And I'll just tell you if you don't know it, it's about Michael Weston, a blacklisted CIA spy who is burned and left stranded in Miami with no resources, forcing him to use his skills as a freelance operative to help people while trying to uncover who burned him. Actually, it's a fun little show. And the reason why I'm bringing it up in context to Miami, relative to Miami, and I don't have a picture of it here, but what I'm just going to show for context, again, we had the glamorous of the Art Deco district and the whole, cachet of the water. They were often showing, scenes out on the water. Actually, I saw them. They filmed a live scene right near where I was working. I saw the double. They're doing like a car racing scene, but whatever. But the point too is that Miami really flourished with all of these TV series and movies being filmed on location. Now, the reason why I'm bringing up Burn Notice is because right as that wrapped up, and again, our title, it's a wrap. For anyone coming in now, that's an acronym for Wind, Roll, and Print. So WRAP in the movie industries. So they had a lot of great shows filmed in Miami. It was authentic. It felt good. But then what happened, that was like Burn Notice was the last series, I think, that they shot in Miami, because then the city decided we're not going to support and give the generous like tax benefits to the production companies coming in. And that made a big deal monetarily. So what happened? Miami was a little mini movie capital down here. And then after that Burn Notice, everything moved to Atlanta. That they, not everything, but you know what I mean. Anything that they would have filmed here locally, they moved the big production houses over to Atlanta. And if you're in Atlanta, you know that's true. You've probably seen a lot of filming going on. And in fact, a nice little segue and crossover from my last live talking about Miami in the movie The Tomorrow War, which I don't recommend you seeing, but because of the vibes. But anyway, they just showed a flash here and there of iconic buildings in the scene, but then the street stuff when they're running through all the streets, I'm like, this isn't Miami. And it wasn't. It was Atlanta or some back sets, right? And other CGI stuff. But it definitely was not Miami. So there's something that you just can't replicate about back in the day when you had Miami Vice and even this Burn Notice. These shows just were so iconic because they were filmed locally on location. All right, enough about that. But what I do want to bring up before I move on, and we're going to get to the fun conceptual art stuff of the islands and other things on the art side of things. But here we have, these are just a couple examples. That's the Marlin of these Art Deco buildings. And I lived and worked in Miami Beach kind of back in the day. And it's important to note that all of those iconic buildings, the Art Deco buildings, and there's a lot of books about, showing them. Let me go back a step. This is one of them. It's called Deco Delights, Preserving the Beauty and Joy of Miami Beach Architecture. And it's by Barbara Baird Capitman, and she was instrumental in making sure all of these buildings were preserved in the 70s because they were going to start tearing them down. And she was instrumental in making sure a whole art district, the Art Deco district, preserved these buildings and made it so that they could not be torn down. And that was buildings prior to 1950 in this golden Art Deco era. Anyway, this is just one book of many, and I'll put it in the description area below. And just to give you an idea, it's got a lot of nice color illustrations of all kinds of buildings, all in that Art Deco district. And like I said, I've lived on Miami Beach for many, many years, different decades. Just gives you an idea of the character of everything. It was a very special, extraordinary time. And actually, before the whole Deco district was preserved, it's known for having this cool pastel palette. You can see here, different like mints and blues and pinks and some pastel yellows and things. And right before that, things were on decline in Miami Beach. And they even were painting these buildings like the ugly, trendy beige and brown, chocolate-like colored brown. So those buildings, were looking really bad. So this movement came through, and I'm spending a bit of time on it because it's important. A group was founded called the Miami Design Preservation League. They put out this book. This is an original book I picked up in the early 90s. It was put out in the late 70s. And I'm just going to read this little, snippet on the back, this little summary, because it's a very important thing if you know Miami, that this entire district was preserved, because without that, if you know Miami Beach, it's near Lincoln Road, a pedestrian mall. There would not be as much of the pull to go to Miami Beach as there is today. Yes, the beaches are beautiful and whatnot, but really this kind of sets the whole scene literally back to our kind of movie TV theme. Oh, and I don't know if I welcomed you, Rita Pita. I don't know if I did or not. I don't think I did, but welcome, Rita. Okay, so I'm just going to read this really quickly about the Miami Design Preservation League. So MDPL is a nonprofit historic preservation group founded in 1976. It was the first Art Deco society and has led to the worldwide worldwide movement for protection of and education in early 20th century design and art. MDPL in South Florida has fostered appreciation of modern design, history, music, architecture, fashion, and typography. Our efforts have been given significance by the unique Art Deco district of Miami Beach, which we first identified in 1979, then nominated to the National Register of Historic Places. Since that time, we have battled to save, restore, and promote the unique treasure of 20th century architecture for the continuing enjoyment of the public. The League will continue its projects to educate the public about the historic district. These include Art Deco Weekend, regular walking tours, and then, they do other things. So anyway, just want to shine a light on those folks. I don't know how they operate in recent times. I was very familiar with them in the late 80s, early 90s. They were doing good stuff. Hopefully that is the continuing trend. But anyway, I just want to give a shout out because that will now set us up for looking at art projects and these larger than life art installations. And also, I'm so close to getting there. The black bar is going to be the art concept of the coming up next. The islands themselves, and they were called like surrounding islands was the name of the art installation project. But let me just, before I get into that, it's so close. I want you to look to the white side of this. So I posted this in my post section. And this came on my radar too as I was researching all of this. So you'll see I have a list there. Somebody else generated it, so full credit goes to whoever first did this on the internet. It seems pretty solid and accurate. You can jockey the years, the numbers, and the names. Tweak them a little bit if it doesn't make sense to you. But I highlighted a couple of things. So we know, for example, there's Gen X. There's the baby boomers before that, and I'm going backwards. So silent generation, greatest generation, lost generation. Now, for me, I kind of was familiar a little bit, with those generations. But then I'm like, well, what goes before the lost generation? Because I didn't know what happened before that. And this is going to be fun work on your own. But look at all of those, okay, going back to the 1400s. So they've been given names and labels. But what really caught my interest was there was one called, they're dubbing Enlightenment Generation, Awakening Generation, and Transcendental Generation. So those of you who are familiar with not conspiracy theory, at this point it's just theory. And it's not, we're truth seekers, but we're also truth finders. So remember that. So for those of us seeking the truth, this might, light up some things for you to look into further. The labeling of the generations is very telling of what was going on. And for those of you who are in tune with that, there's been multiple resets on our planet, just as we're raising our consciousness and trying to liberate from oppressive entities, let's just say, something happens and we get like a memory wipe. It's that, quintessential Tower of Babel moment where we're reaching for the sky, but then a hand comes down and puts us into confusion and chaos, and we go asunder to the point where we can't even understand each other. Those times that is in the spiritual battle happening right now. So that's being attempted right now. Look at your Wi-Fi towers. Look at other cosmic energies are making us feel a little funky these days. I don't know about you, but last night was a clear indication I couldn't sleep for, to save my life. Every hour is up. So we've got cosmic energies trying to uplift and help assist the upliftment of our consciousness collectively. But then we also have literal tech that's trying to suppress or disorienting things. I mean, look at all the whales washed up to shore when they beach. They get disoriented. That's why they're beach whales. They can't, their sonar, is affected, and they can't even float on their own. They keep trying to dive down, even if it's shallow water. And I'm just using that as an analogy of what can be happening with us. Oh, hey, Carolina. Welcome, Carolina. But, if we get certain signals, microwaves, all that other kind of junk flying around, look at everyone talks about they feel more peaceful when you turn the router off on your Wi-Fi. We're talking mechanics, we're talking technology, interfering with our biofields. Anyway, I went on a tangent on that for some reason. Oh, just, I guess, talking about the resets. And there's many ways to do it. But guess what? This time it ain't going to work because we're on to them by now. And this list is an interesting little tell of what's been going on in the past with our generations. And I think we can happily say, not on our watch, not this time, because the tipping point has already been crossed. Those of us with loving hearts who do wish well, who don't want to see all this like negative vibration. Again, the show is called It's a Wrap, alluding to like production stuff. I think for the most part, we don't want to see all this really negative stuff. And now, even with some of the movies, they, as far as like the negative side of Hollywood, is getting creative on how they're trying to commandeer our emotions and everything else through actual sound waves. Like there was that movie, let me see if I get it right. I think it was The Incredibles, the animation, of a family, and the dad was like an unlikely superhero or superhero under wraps, incognito. And that was fine and good. But the second movie came out, and I remember I was going there with family. Remember, we went up to the back then you could still go get a ticket at the ticket window at the movie theater. And I remember there being a big sign that says, what did it say? Like, warning, might trigger some people, their visual field. I'm like, why are we getting a warning to go see a quote unquote kids animation movie? And I didn't like seeing that. And so I told the people I was with, younger ones, like, okay, we're going to go in, but if anything crazy happens, we're going to cover the eyes. And sure enough, in that movie, I was like waiting for it, like what could merit a warning? And then sure enough, they do like a strobe flashing, intense several times. And you could tell that's when they were putting subliminal images in between frames. So anyway, there's many ways, to do that quote unquote warfare and try to dumb us down, numb us out, put other thoughts in our head, whatever. But let's move on to the happier tone. We're literally going to move on into the pink side of things. And one more note on pink before I get into the happy. I know I say I'm going to do this and then I do the opposite. Before we jump into the pink happiness, okay, well, happiness for some, not for environmentalists on that one, but pink, the color pink. I remember clearly, I was saying it's the heart chakra, there's pink and green. Thanks for the pink hearts in the chat, Illuminated Perfume. And the purple one by Carolina and all the other beautiful emojis. Thank you, everybody. But the color pink, yes, it's a happy vibe. It's a feel-good vibe. It's one of the heart chakras, pink, the other's green. But also, there was experiments done with it. I remember clearly in the 70s as a little, smaller kid watching on one of these news programs, weekly news programs. And they were doing an expose or a feature, I guess you would call it, where they were playing around with color psychology. Now, I've talked about color psychology on other shows, why you see red in restaurants, because it incites hunger. The classic Italian tablecloth, red and white, you're going to be like, let's eat. And other tricks that are done in grocery stores and things to make us want to go for certain products. But this is about pink. And so this experiment, or they were showing an experiment that was being done in prisons. And they showed that they painted all the walls pink. And they were highlighting this on this news program, that like documentary, that as they moved the prisoners in and out, they were much more docile and easier to control. Because if you look at pink walls, you're just kind of like numbed out, like the sensory, it's overload. So yes, it can be very positive, but depending on how it's applied, it can also have other effects, right? So, but we're going to focus on the happy factor of pink. I joke around sometimes. It's like, if you ask me, I don't eat them really anymore because I can't handle them in the body because of the ascension and the ascension symptoms. But if you ask me to pick out like a pink sprinkled donut, pink covered, strawberry frosted donut, I don't even have to eat it. I just look at it and I get happy. So for me, the pink is the happy factor. Okay. So I call those the happy factor donuts. Anyway, let's get into this. I'm going to read, let me read you the artist concept on this first, just a real short thing. And again, I invite you to go look at it further. I'm going to hold this up for a second and then I'm going to take it down. But this is these wrapped islands that I'm going to give you the artist description about. They happened, if you can see, it says Miami Beach here. The Atlantic Ocean would be off the page. And so there's a bridge. There's a lot of bridges, but there's one called the Venetian Causeway. And then if you can see, it's kind of hard to see, and I'm going to hold this up closer in a minute. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're talking about, they're wrapping the islands moving up through here. Okay. I know they're hard to see, but just go find your own Google image. But you can barely make them out. But we're talking about in the expanse between Miami Beach and Miami, these little islands up here. So there's 195 or MacArthur Causeway happening there. The Venetian Islands here. Your Port of Miami is down here, just to orient anybody. South Beach is over here. Okay. Millionaires Row starts up here. Okay. Anyway, so keep that in mind and maybe pull up an image of your own about these islands from 1983. I'm just going to read this real quick and I'll hold it up again. And then we're almost done with my slides if anybody wants to talk about anything else. Okay, so I'm just going to read this from the internet. It says, the 1983 installation in Miami known as Surrounded Islands was a monumental piece of environmental art, also referred to as land art and conceptual art. Created by the renowned artists Christo and Jeanne Claude, the project involves encircling 11 man-made islands in Biscayne Bay with 6.5 million square feet of floating pink fabric. The key features of the artwork, the concept. The artists viewed it as a statement about the relationship between humans, nature, and the urban environment, specifically underlining how the people of Miami live between land and water. The installation, the shiny woven polypropylene fabric extended 200 feet out from each island into the bay. It was sewn into 79 custom patterns to perfectly match the contours of the shoreline. The scale, spanning 7 miles, the artwork was completely financed by the artists themselves through the sale of their preparatory drawings and collages, which they had many. And I suggest you look into that too if any of this, inspires you whatsoever. And then there's more, but I'll read one more thing. Duration. The dazzling pink borders, which were installed by a crew of 430 people, remained on display for 2 weeks in May 1983. So here we had a lot of effort, okay? A lot of effort to create this. And actually, I'm going to fold this over so you can focus on the artwork and not the city map. Give me a minute. So yeah, a lot of people took a lot of time to make this happen. And here's a person, standing on the rolls. So they brought the fabric in rolls, and then somehow, the people like unrolled them, stitched them together. Anyway, I just remember seeing this as a front page story on the Miami Herald, back in the day of, just a huge supersized photo, full page of these islands. So it's pretty special. Now there was controversies. So even though it was only installed for 2 weeks, I think it was controversy because we got a lot of ocean life, as I mentioned earlier, ocean life, and this affects what light comes through or not, down to the microscopic level, and then the trees and the wildlife in here. So there was a big uproar. This shouldn't be allowed, etc. But at the end of the day, who knows, backroom deal. I don't know what they did, but it went on. And I remember I was torn because I'm like, wow, that's so iconic. That is really cool. And I still am totally into the art world, art scene. So I was a little torn because I'm like, wow, that's cool. And that was my first aha moment to see large scale environmental art being done. But at the same time, I'm like, ooh, but I do see where that could harm marine life and organisms and all of that, So anyway, but it went off, and Miami's still there, I guess. Okay, now we're going to go into another fun place. I'm going to give you a little flash quick preview, and then I'm going to put that. This is the last slide. I have 2 more before it, but let me just show you what's coming next. So the same duo, Christo and Jeanne Claude, I guess, his partner. They then wrapped the Reichstag in Berlin. They wrapped an entire building in 1995, and I was there. Actually moved there at that time. I didn't know this was going on, so I stood in front and got to see it. So it's funny that this topic came up because I'm like, what are the chances? I've lived in Miami when that was going down, and I just happened to have moved to Berlin right when this other installation was coming along. So I want to read you the concept for this because this gets interesting. Let me show you the history first. Bear with me if I jump around. Okay, so let's look at, I'm going to do it this way, old-fashioned way, cropping. Let me do this so the focus stays where it needs to be on this one. Give me a second, more or less. I missed it. Give me a minute. And, check this out online too on your own. All right, so I'm going to do a cheat sheet here. I'm going to crop it like this. Yes, I am. Okay, here we go. So this is the Reichstag. So this is like the seat of parliament, and it's vastly changed, as you're going to see in a minute. So here we go. Any of you Tartaria fans, Antiquitech fans, check out that baby. Okay, that's sitting in Berlin, and that's what it looked like pre-World War II. Okay, check out everything there. Okay, then what happens? World War II. That's this. All right, check it out. Really, really destroyed. So the reason why I'm showing this is that dome in the center was removed. because of all of the damage. Can you see the damage? So that dome was cleared off, okay? Understandably so. It's not structurally sound. They took it away. So in the time that was, you know, somehow devastated, then you had the wall come up. So everything kind of on the east side of Berlin was trapped behind the wall. Progress was stopped. It kind of like froze it in time, which was a blessing and a curse. Then we'll fast forward. There's a lot of history there, so much history there. But let's fast forward to modern times. In the 90s, there were competitions of who's going to recreate the dome and how. So they weren't going to do a faithful replica of that dome. This becomes important later, but I'm just going to touch on it now. We'll get to the art installation they did there. But keep in mind, okay, completely scrapped away the dome. And now what they put in its place was, you know, this. So this is, you know, in modern times. So it's a glass dome. There's a funnel down, you know, within it. And I'll show you the interior views in a second that allow like a light well to come into the inner chamber of Parliament, the Bundestag, that's active today. I think it moved there in 1999 from Bonn. I think that's in Bonn, Germany. So anyway, here we have the, you know, what it looks like. You've got this glass dome, the older building, and this is, you know, shining on at night. And again, at the very end of the show, I'll show you some interior views. Now, I was there too when that was unveiled. And I use the word unveiled on purpose because we're going to get to the concept, the artist's concept of why would they wrap an entire building. And I'm going to read it because they put it together a little more clear. But I think it was, the short end of it was that they wanted to, it was revealing by hiding. So wrap your mind around that one. Did that work? Do you think that's a sound concept, that you're covering up a whole building, that you're going to highlight things more by hiding it than, you know, revealing it in a different way? Does that ring a bell for you? Anyway, it's just a rhetorical question. Okay. So anyway, let's hop over to, I'm going to hop to the wrapping and then I'll show you the interior. And let me read their statement. I have to go again to my phone. So I'll show this one more time as I read the statement off my screenshot. But anyway, you can just see different views of this. And in the upper corner here, you can see, you know, there's no dome. So the artist had an opportunity to do this, you know, pre-dome, pre-construction there. And let me read the artist statement and then we'll take a look at it and see if it kind of holds water. And if it does or doesn't matter. It's just what your gut punch, your kind of gut level feeling, you know, does for you, if it rings true or not. Oh, and I see Illuminated Perfume says, does that ring a true bell for you? Exactly. And then what do we know about bells versus no bells in some of these old buildings? That's a whole nother story. But let me find just their artist concept and read it real quick and see if it makes sense. And again, it was their concept, so it only needs to make sense to them, I guess. But it is a very public project, and so it's time to kind of really look at it, right? And see if it's, what do I want to say? If their explanation seems harmonious and like a valid, or knowing what we know now, as a lot of us are truth seeking and finding and digging deeper, could there have been another reason why they covered it like that? Just saying, a lot can be done when things are undercover. I'll just throw that little gem out there, right? Okay, so I'm almost there to the, here we go. Okay, this is where I'm going with it. So it's just a little, you know, blurb. So bear with me. Or go get a drink, have fun, and come back to this later on the replay. But I'm not gonna read a ton of information, just a little bit. So here we go. Christo and his artistic partner and wife, Jeanne Claude, wrapped buildings to reveal by hiding. That's the one I want you guys to see. How does that feel? As Roxana at Illuminated Perfume says, does that ring a bell for you? Wink. Okay, so by concealing familiar landmarks and miles of fabric and rope, they temporarily stripped away superficial details, allowing viewers to appreciate the architectural silhouettes, volumes, and textures in a striking, completely new way. Their highly conceptual, temporary installations challenge traditional views of art and public space through several core philosophies. One of them, which is emphasizing ephemerality. The artists believed in the transience of art. The installations were only up for a matter of days or weeks before being dismantled and recycled, which they compared to the fleeting nature of life itself. Dematerialization, wrapping objects originated as a way to quote unquote mummify them, conceptually packing everyday items up for a symbolic nomadic journey. Challenging bureaucracy. The enormous effort required to secure permits and fund these projects highlighted the complex bureaucratic and physical structures surrounding public architecture. That I can say is very true. It's a miracle they even got permits. No hidden agendas. While the public often read deep political symbolism into their works, such as the wrapping of the Reichstag representing a unified, newly democratic Germany, because remember the wall fell around 1989-ish, okay? The artists maintained that their work had no political agenda. They simply wanted people to experience their environment differently and enjoy the art for what it was. Okay, that's just what I can, pull off of the internet. Now, they wrapped more things. They wrapped Pont Neuf in Paris. They wrapped this, I'm going to read this too, a medieval tower on the outskirts of Spoleto, Italy. It says it was wrapped for the Festival of Two Worlds in 1968. So that goes back to their, their origin story of this artistic duo. They wrapped this thing. I'm sorry for the glare, and the lights are in a weird place, but maybe you can see it better there. And again, just look on the internet. So they wrapped a medieval tower. I'm surprised they got permit for that too, right? That they didn't damage it with any of the installation. Then they also wrapped a fountain and building facade at the center of town in Spoleto, Italy. And that was, again, wrapped for the Festival of Two Worlds in 1968. So they were actually literally permitted to wrap a lot of different monuments in that town, it seems. So there might be something to look into there. But so you can make it out, hopefully. I'm sorry again for how am I catching that light? Oh, well, here. Sorry about this, guys. You're probably getting seasick. Just trying to avoid me. Now I got me doubled. Oh, that's why. Like, why am I showing up? Because it went black here. I'm just trying to see if it will. No, the lighting's throwing it off. I'm sorry. There we go. You see the silhouette. I was just trying for you to see the silhouette. Again, this is just, does the image evoke and emote anything to you that you want to look at further? Great if you do. Again, like I say, if you do look into any of these things that I hint drop on, or just, drop and go on, do let me know in an email later if you find anything really cool, if it leads you down another trail. Okay. All right. So I think that's what I wanted to say about that. Oh, and then I just wanted to read you real quick about the Reichstag. And again, it's the seat of parliament. And just a couple of little facts about that itself, if I can find it quick enough. If not, I invite you to go look at it. I thought I had it here. Hang on. And if not, maybe I was just supposed to tell you what I told you and leave you to look for the rest. Oh, here. I know why I'm way in the wrong place. Give me a second. Need a little background music here as I search. All right. I don't think I'm going to find it quick enough, although it was right here. Okay, I'm going to leave it alone. Look it up. I think I gave you the key aspects of it, just as the really quick history on it. There's so much more fascinating history to the fall of the wall itself. If you look at Berlin and what it went through before the war, after the war, fascinating history there. Okay, so let me just show you one more slide, and then we can open it up for anything else. And if not, what time is it? I don't know. I think what I'll do, I'm going to wrap it up on this slide. Feel free to throw anything in chat now or not. And then for any of you who like just a little message, I might pull from the 50 Plants That Heal. It's the only deck I see close to me. And if you need to leave early, it's fine. Okay, so anyway, here's the inside of that dome. And actually, the dome in the Reichstag that was redone, it was by Norman Foster and Partners out of England at the back in the day. They had won the bid for doing the project. And I remember I was there in the first weeks of the dome opening. You could go up in it. And I remember we had to wait for hours and hours, even with a reserved slot to go see it. So here, let me just show you this part first. So here again, that's the wrapping of the whole Reichstag to orient you. That's the Brandenburg Gate or the Brandenburger Tor in the foreground. And so this denotes the east side, going where the Crayola crayon here is going. The east is this way. And on the other side of the gate in a huge park is the west that way. Okay, and then that's sitting right there between them. So then here's a view from the top of the new dome. Looks like they put at wherever they have a flag here, I think they put like solar, they put skylights. And then in the front, they have like solar panels. And you can walk around the roof level. I think you can see the people, sorry, shakiness here. You can see like people and benches and stuff around there. So you can walk out, on roof level. You can walk around here, which that's the view. It kind of spirals around. You can walk around. You can look down into the Bundestag, into the parliament. And I don't have a shot of the parliament below, but I invite you to look at that. And this is, again, acting as a light well to bring light down into the chamber below where they do the parliament proceedings. So there you go. And again, I think they relocated everything to here in 1999. I think the seat of it, the Bundestag, was in Bonn, Germany before that. Okay. Anyway, that's my little tour around, and that's my presentation for today. So that's just what I had on my list to talk about. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. I was going to say, too, yeah, I guess I'll mention it. I did include the song Ice Ice Baby in my post section because to me, they're just certain songs. Take away politics, take away even the lyrics and what might be encoded in those, and just feel the rhythm. And, some of these songs, it's funny, it just takes you right back to a place if you enjoy dancing like I did. Just like dance around the kitchen, dance around wherever you are, and bring back this pink energy. Let's, bring back the fun, even if the things seem convoluted, overcomplicated, maybe sorrowful. A lot of us have lost a lot of people over the last years since the COVID, I'll say especially. But maybe now it's time to let more of this kind of feel-good, sunshine, pink energy come back in our lives. I mentioned in my previous show that, hey, I was in a place where I love music, love concerts my whole life. But I got to say, the last, ever since the COVID, everything seemed much harder, much darker, like trudging through mud. And I just didn't feel it like all the music I love, just to dance around, play it in the background like I used to. But just now, notably, on the last couple of shows I mentioned, that's just now coming back in again. So let that be something for any of you. Maybe you never lost it. I lost it for a while based on what's going on around, much like these larger than life art installations. There's larger than life stuff going around that really has put a kibosh, like, hey, dad, and, don't, or mom, as your kid, like, hey, don't ruin the party. Don't, turn off the music. Hey, and that kind of happened in that window. At least that's how I feel. But now I feel that it's finally, that's lifting. And it is going to be important for us to get into whatever lights us up, whatever that might be, even if it's a mini light up or a contentment, just get us from, here's the demarcation line. Here's the darkness. I got my black shirt to illustrate. Okay. Here's the black in the depths below. And here's the happy fun in the sun time. If we can just get ourselves equal or a little bit up each day, we may wake up in the pits, and just anything we can do to just inch that up. Now, if you're already flying and singing, then just please take it and run with it so that you can counterbalance any portion of the world that we're trying to get out of the muck, right? So let's get that pink energy going. Fun music, especially. I brought up the Vanilla Ice musician and his Ice Ice Baby, because that's just one of those songs that just can get me moving personally. And of course, he sings about, Beach Street Avenue, A1A, and all of the key, iconic things around Miami. And he filmed his music video in Miami. So, of course, I'm partial to that. But before I knew it, I put him in there because he's a key part of like the Miami thing. But then I didn't realize until doing more research that supposedly, and this is not political whatsoever, he was one of the performers. There's controversy over him performing at that, I didn't watch it, but that 250th year celebration at the White House. So supposedly he was one of the few performers that said, yeah, I'll come. And that a lot of other ones were backing out. Now I watched interviews with him to see what, he was talking about. And he made it clear, I'm going, you just tell me where I'm going to show up and let's have the party. He made it clear to say, this is not political. This is not for or against anybody. And in fact, none of us should be. He specifically was saying, now is the time, and this relates to the etymology of Venezuela. He says, now is the time for us to come together as one. Time to unify, just have fun. He didn't say it like this, but politics, division be damned. And the interviewers keep trying to weasel in and try to make him say something divisive, and he won't do it. He's like, hey, we're all love each other, come together as one, dance, feel like a teenager again, and let's just have some fun. So I will say that, he's got that absolutely right. I feel the same way. So I was happy to see that. and again, that was all a little side thing that happened unbeknownst to me. I'm just like, oh, let me throw him in there. I didn't know where he stands on anything or any of his politics stuff. So it is about seizing the fun and moving. Moving is great for us. The music itself, does can very much, reorganize the cells themselves to go from, kind of a dreary state to being whole and nurtured through the rhythm and through music and moving our body. So find a great song. I'm probably going to sign off with that. I mean, I'll do a little card reading, but find that song, maybe make that your mission. And if you already are, like I said, take it and run with it, because whatever you do in pure joy, and if you're already on that vibe, man, you just lift up the whole world. No joke. Okay. All right. So I don't know if anybody had any pings or thoughts on, do you agree with the hiding is revealing? This can be a rhetorical question still, but I need time to wrap around that one. And I also want to kind of intuit it a little, like, was there anything more going on beyond like why they covered this stuff? Was anything done under there when it was like a tent under wraps, or was this just a harmless, very fascinating art installation? I don't know the answer to that, but I don't know what kind of political pull you have to do to wrap that entire Reichstag in Berlin. I'm just going to say that. Although Germany, they're very pro art installations. I'll give them that, and progressive kind of art, stuff. So maybe it wasn't too bad, but I don't know. Is there another story there, or no? Let's just take it at face value and stop looking for stuff. So how do you feel about it? I'm still going to process. All right. Well, I think that's it. If no one has anything else, I'll pull a card for sure from the 50 plants that heal, and maybe just looking at that at face value, because I don't think, oddly so, I don't have anything else around. So let's do it. All right. Let me see. Yeah, this is it, guys. Guys and girls, we're just going to look at, I'll show you the cover. So actually, here we go. The 50 plants that heal. And this is just kind of a straight up, what you see is what you get. Like you see plant parts. I just happen to get walnut just for fun. I just took it off the top. But just so you see the format of this deck for anyone who's not familiar, it gives you the Latin name, the name, active elements, the size, the characteristics of the plants and flowers, also the healing benefits, and it just shows you, for example, for the walnut, astringent, helps with mild burns, using it as a balm, helps chaps, cracks, and stings. So there's a lot it can help. Okay, so that'll be our bonus card. I'll just show you walnut. All right, now I'm just laughing to myself because walnut, and looking for messages here, we were talking about Berlin and the wall and the falling of the wall. And the wall was right near, where the Reichstag is. So that might be, just something for you to look in further in the history if you're not familiar. But otherwise, look how beautiful this plant is. And I love these cards because it shows you the various phases of them blooming and blossoming, the fruit, the leaves. As we talk about, healing properties come through in the sap, the resin, the tree bark. I mean, the one that comes right to mind is they say that like willow bark, it can help with headaches if you prepare it, in a proper way. They're just, take any one plant and take all of its parts and pieces, and more than likely you've got a cure for so much. I'm going to do, thanks. SKR says, I love your cards. You got so many. I do. I had a phase many years ago, in fact. I started collecting decks, oracle decks, playing card decks, like any kind of deck that has interesting images, because you don't need an official tarot deck or oracle deck out there, although they're nice. You can use playing cards. You can read almost anything. I've had somebody give me an incredible reading using playing cards, just regular, diamond, club, what are the hearts, and what's the other one? Spades deck. I was amazed how this one person could read it. Oh, I got it. And I've done it too myself. And I'm like, wow, it works. So anything with cards, you can make it happen. All right, let's see. We got hazel. So maybe that means something to somebody. And again, whatever I say or don't say, you might get activated by just a word I say, or it might mean something to you. In this case, it could be a person named Hazel. But let's just start off looking at the energy of this hazel, the little parts and pieces. So that's just an overview of different, elements of hazel. And we'll go in a little closer. I've never seen a hazel plant in person. I don't know if any of you have, but it's looking pretty interesting. And what do we know? Hazelnut. So I think right away, if I can't eat the stuff, it's been processed and whatnot, and it's super sweet. But I know a lot of people love Nutella. And also, it's funny, I'm just thinking of all the yummy chocolate and food things because I'm really hungry right now. Hazelnut prominently also in the bocce. Italy has that bocce. It looks like a kiss, bocce's kisses. So it's shaped and then it's got the foil on it and they have little messages in there. Anyway, reminding me of that. Plus, there's so many other things. I'm sure you guys can think of more stuff with hazelnut in it. But let's just see if anything pops out to me. I'm going to leave it to you to look at it at the same time. Let me just see if there's anything that jumps out or not. So, yeah, they have a lot of properties. Anti-inflammatory is one of them. Can help treat unpleasant things like diarrhea. That's fun. But anyway, there's a lot of things it can do. So I'm just showing you that. Yeah, and this one, I'm just trying to feel it out if I'm getting anything. I am getting one thing, and it's kind of an unlikely thing to just say. When I say a reading, this can also just be, like I said, a word, something activating, anything that I say. It doesn't have to be anything in depth. And anything that I do, this is just for the collective anyway, kind of getting the energies. But when I see hazel, it may not be directly related, but it brings me to another herb or plant, which I don't have in here, which is witch hazel. And I will say that for a lot of things that might be irritated down there, if you've had a child, that if you had any surgery bringing a child into the world, they tell you to use like witch hazel pads to calm things down there. And I will tell you, look into that if you don't know or familiar with it already. That thing is like a wonder healer. It can take care of so many issues that you might be having with your body. And you know what? I'm just feeling to pick 3 more, even if I don't read from them, but just to show the name and the front and backs of the cards, because there are 50 of these. I haven't even, here, let me shuffle. I haven't even read into all of them, and a lot of times the same ones come up. Like one that likes to come up a lot is poppy and oregano. Whatever I do in shuffle, those come up a lot. Okay, here's the one. Sometimes lavender comes up a lot. Okay, 2 came out. So let's look at these 2 for anybody who's still in. Okay, I just said oregano, did I not? I pick up 2 cards off the floor. Ta-da! Someone has a sense of humor, because these just flew on the floor. I love it. Okay, so oregano, we'll go, backwards. So Origanum vulgare. And let's see. A lot of you know that, they have aperitif properties, also facilitating digestion. Some people say, too, there's a lot that they do, actually. You can make a tea, a wine, a poultice out of it. Some people swear by oregano oil. Again, do your own research, not medical advice, but just throwing it out there. People I know in direct experience or people that I know. Some people like to take a proper one for the body for ingesting, a drop of oregano oil under the tongue. And supposedly that helps prevent getting, sick, or any illnesses. So they swear by that. Oh, here's the front. I forgot to show you the front. So look at those beautiful flowers and buds and blooms and the leaves. These are artwork in and of themselves when you get in the whole botanical world. Oh, and that's leading me to something else. I wasn't going to do it, but I said leading me to the botanical world, which I did not even count on for this show. So that's fun how this works, isn't it? This book, Tiffany's Lost Genius by John Loring. It's all about Paulding Farnham, who was an artist for creating brooches, jewelry way back. I don't even remember when now. But let me take this off because this book, if you're into botanicals and sketches and watercolors, this book I love because in this case we have orchids, but they did these beautiful wash techniques. And this book directly shows you how they created the jewelry from a sketch. So here's there are better examples than this, but you see this, see this over here where my fingers are. So they do a watercolor and then they create the actual piece. Let's see. This book is actually pretty fascinating. There's so many mind-bending examples in here. Hold on, that I wish I bookmarked it, but just to give you an idea of back in the day. Look how beautiful these washes. Some are gouache, some are watercolor. And they really studied the botanicals. So they, were in the presence of the different flowers. Hey, okay, hold on. And some get into detail. Like they don't have the before and after. But look at this. This is done with like porcelain and whatever. But this is, I don't have the drawing, but they get into really detail on those orchids. And of course, showcasing their gems. It's Tiffany, right? They had, brooches, crowns, necklaces, hairpins. Okay, hang on. Oh, here's a good example. So here's a before and after. So the watercolor I'm going to show you is at the bottom, and the actual piece is at the top. So here's the beautiful. And if you're into art, play around if you don't normally with darker paper as your background. So it's like a dark gray. And when they do this Gaussian watercolor technique, it pops right out. And then look at that. That's the piece. That's the brooch. So pretty good, I'd say, And I'll show you one more. And then we'll do one more plant card, and then we'll be done. Let me see if I can get there. But this is a beautiful book. If you can ever get it from a library, if you can't get it. Let me just see if there's got to be one more to finish off on. Hang on, I want to do a photo finish. Dang it. They show the picture, but not the side by side. Well, okay. I can't get to it. But anyway, just showing you what's possible with very limited drawing, like this blue one, or painting. Okay, wrong way. Here we go. On the paper. And then, oh, here we go. Here's the brooch down there for real. And there's the drawing. So anyway, that may inspire you. You can even get a garbage bag. Not a garbage bag. If like you're in the United States, we have those paper bags at the shopping, grocery shopping. Sorry, my mind's all over the place. Grocery shopping, you get a paper bag that's brown. Just get out some nice, what I want to say, some nice pencils, colored pencils, or opaque, type of paints like a gouache, and have fun. Okay, even just ink, get creative. Even just ink with like using a quality white colored pencil, you can do a lot of really cool effects. Okay, that's just coming up for somebody. Okay, now one more card we'll do. We got leek, L-E-E-K. I haven't, aside from seeing the green on that, I haven't seen all the other little stages of it. So that's pretty cool. And there's so many jokes, bad jokes about leeks, like L-E-E-K, and I can't think of any right now, but I'm sure you know them because it's a pun and a play on the vegetable, the leek. So allium porum. And again, a lot of these, sorry about the shaking, are good as a diuretic or good against inflammation, just like this one is. So there's a whole world, whether we ingest it, if it's safe to ingest, or use as a topical, a poultice, a paste, so much with all of this. And even like we said last week, I think Rita brought up marigolds are good against mosquitoes at the doorstep. I had planted lemongrass, which was good against, good for keeping mosquitoes away, as is mint. And so there's so many ways we can harmonize with our plant buddies. So Rita Fetus is, she's talking to Illuminated. Illuminated Perfume says, I have so much oregano. It grows really well in my garden with a green heart. And Rita says, that's so cool. And Shani T says, hi, Varleigh. There's also the flower essence angle. Yes, the flower essence angle. And somebody in the chat who knows all about that is on the YouTube channel, Illuminated Perfume, and the .com for her site. So I would say she knows quite a bit about that. Check it out. Well, anyone have any last, not last final in a very gloom and doom sense, any other little comments? And if not, I guess we'll wrap it up for now. I didn't even look at the time. Yeah, an hour and a half is about right. Thanks again for being here. And you never know what's coming up next week. Like I said, I didn't expect to talk about half the stuff. Oh, Illuminated Perfume says flower essences are different from essential oils. Interesting. Okay. I need to look more on Illuminated Perfume's site. And Rita says, have a great week. Thank you. Escar says, thank you. Thank you all. And we'll see what happens next week. I do have a theme I do want to talk about, but I might need time to read up on it. And like I said, if any of you, I intuit like what's the next thing going to be, but feel free. If there's anything that you want me to talk about or put forth for us to have a conversation with, feel free to email and let me know. Otherwise, I just go with whatever wants to come through. Shani T says, thank you. And I thank you. So, all right, guys, big love, blessings, hugs to all, whatever you need right now. Let's lift up the world together just with a smile and by all the love I feel here in the chat right here, right now, or if it's on the replay. So love you all. Bye.